Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 series of North American webinars. My name is Scott O'Connor. I'm a senior mining consultant based in Denver, and I will be the host for today's webinar on Deswik Uno, the underground network optimizer. We've put together an exciting list of webinars, and we'll be presenting them throughout the summer of 2020. And the content is comprised of new or lesser known Deswik features that have shown considerable interest in our region. We hope you enjoy them. First up is this webinar on Deswik Uno, presented by Christophe Lemieux. He's a senior mining consultant based in Sudbury, Ontario. Before I hand it over to Christophe, I want to remind you that we are also offering virtual classroom training sessions this summer. The training is designed to help you put into practice the topics that we are presenting. The training session for Deswik Uno will be held on June 17th. For more information on virtual training or to register for a course, please visit the Deswik homepage, www.deswik.com. We've got a banner there right at the bottom. Today's webinar will be approximately 45 minutes long and includes a presentation, demonstration, and question and answer session. Please hold your questions until the Q&A session. And now, over to you, Christophe.
Thanks, Scott. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. I'm pretty excited to be presenting Deswik Uno, our underground network optimization tool. So Deswik Uno, I'm sure you guys have all heard about the stope optimizer that can create your stopes for you automatically. So this would be kind of the next step, which would be creating your development designs for you automatically. So Deswik Uno rapidly create optimized least cost practical decline and planar stope development designs. So optimization of planar underground network, so basically designing your level, multiple level designs in a single run, optimization of declines, combination of multiple declines, in consideration of haulage and development cost. So Deswik Uno, it's effectively two combined tools. You have the planar underground network optimizer and the decline optimization tool. So one algorithm for your level and the other algorithm for your decline. Deswik Uno is relatively new module integrated into Deswik CAD, a couple of years old. It was developed by mathematicians from University of Melbourne and University of Waterloo. It uses network theory, so enables finding things such as the shortest path through a network or the best cycles through a network. And algorithms are owned by a third party. So summary. You would basically have your stope designs that you get every year, every month, and then with the settings with Deswik Uno, you would kind of have your development produced automatically. So the setup, pretty simple setup in my opinion. You have a couple of windows. First setup is you will have all your scenarios in there, and then when you go into your scenarios, you can you'll have your inputs and outputs. You basically select your stopes for your inputs, and your outputs will be center lines, solids, and polylines of your development designs. You're followed in that screen with, you can create your points automatically or manually. And then with those points, you'll make a connection to your stopes. You can also pick a mining method, the way you want your development to be created. You're followed with the screen to decline configuration. So you can set up your decline, sort of the direction you want it to go. And if you have multiple declines, you can set that up in there too. There's a cost and parameters window, so you can input some costs, more parameters for your level, and more parameters for your decline. This is also the area where you put your design properties, and you can have the option to preview everything that you've done. Finally, you're followed with the option to use our Auto Development Designer tool. It's also another CAD tool. To add all additional detailed designs from what Uno will create. So when you do a scenario run with Uno, you get some points, you get center lines, you get your walls, and you get your solids as an output. Some cool features. You can create transverse mining plus single decline designs. You can create longitudinal mining plus single decline designs. You can also connect multiple declines together. And you can create even more designs using the Auto Development Designer tool. So Uno will give you a good foundation of the basic designs, and then from that you can piggyback using the Auto Development tool in CAD. You can create designs for various mining methods with the combination of Deswick Uno outputs. So some pretty useful benefits using this tool. You can quickly produce new development design results with new scope design updates. So we constantly get new scope designs. So it'd be nice to have an option to quickly produce your development. Save a lot of time by reducing the manual and repetitive design work. Spend more of that time on creating and evaluating different design scenarios. Consistently reproduce the same design results between planners. It's easily auditable and nicely integrated with other Deswick Suite modules. So Deswick Uno, the big picture, where does this fit? So if we look at the underground optimization process flow, normally you start off with the block model and you want to end up with the optimized NPV schedule. So the current setup we have that we see with our clients is they will use the stope optimizer to do their stope designs automatically, the CAD to do editing and attributing, Deswick IS to do the sequencing, Deswick schedule to do scheduling, resource, and leveling. So where Deswick Uno fits is sort of at the beginning, where once you have the stopes, you can automatically do your development. And then after that, you can turn on all the other bells and whistles if you want, LHS Underground, for your haulage distance and truck hours, Deswick SOT schedule optimization tool to run multiple schedules to get the best NPV, and Deswick Blend to help create a material flow modeling. So Deswick Uno demo. Let's have a look at this. All right, so what we want is we have our stope designs that we receive, and then we start with stopes, and we end up with something like this, which is for our development. Okay, so we'll kind of go through that journey. So as an input, I need my stopes. So the Deswick Uno lives under underground, under tools, underground, and Deswick Uno. It's a separate plugin that loads up. So as you can see here, I already have a bunch of scenarios. What I'm going to do is create a new one, and I'll just call this one demo. Now it asks me to copy over some previous settings, which is actually a really useful tool, but for this I'll say no. I'll save you some time. And the first sort of little wizard window pops up, and it asks me which kind of algorithm you want to use, the level and the decline, so I'll use both. And what I would do is I would go now find where the stopes live. So I'll go and find those layers. So I'll go find my stopes. And on each stope, I need an attribute that is unique to the stope so that I can have a piece of development going to each stope. So in this case, every stope has an ID, which normally gets created automatically with Stope Optimizer. So that makes it easy. So I'm going to use stope ID. And anytime you use kind of scenario, you could have a sort of template of layers ready to go for your scenarios. So I'm just going to kind of create a new scenario with my layers, put that under demo. And it just makes it easy now to, in my Deswick Uno setup, to just point to those layers every time I have a new scenario. So access points, I'll go and pick that layer where I want them created or where they'll live. And I want to basically group my points per level. So I want one point to represent each level. I could put on multiple declines. So if I had multiple zones and I want to kind of join them all up, I could turn that option on. I'll just leave that off for now. Declines to avoid barrier solids. So for example, if I had a fault and I want as much as possible for the decline to stay away from that fault, I can turn that on. So I will be using that option. And we also, other options here include stope as barriers and include planar development as barriers. So I don't want my decline to go through my stopes or my level designs. And then you kind of just pick the outputs. I'm just going to select. I want my development center lines out here. And I want my solids to be here and my walls to come out here. Cool, so that's kind of all these layers right here. All right, so that's all set up. I'm just going to turn off my fault for now. And I'm going to create these points to connect the slopes to my decline. So building points, you can kind of do that automatically or manually. So I'm going to try automatically first, and then maybe add some manual points. I have a couple options here, but basically I want my points to be at the bottom of my slopes. So I'm just going to give that a go, see what I have. So by just pressing that, you can kind of see some of these points that got created. I'm going to do them a little bit better. So I want them with an offset. So I want them at an azimuth of 90, dip of 0, and a distance of, let's say, 120. Let's see what that will give me. So what that does is it moves my points with an offset. And what I can do is, so it's kind of doing the center of gravity of the level. I'm just going to use an option to align them all so that it makes it a little smoother to connect my decline. But you have a couple options to do this. So that is my points. Each points now have attributes on them that were copied from the slopes. So it has the level on it. I'm going to manually create points now. Just make sure I'm on the right layer. I'm going to select this and create a manual point using a cat option, translate. And I'm just going to kind of pick the distance from there to there and then translate that point. So I'm adding points manually. You just have to make sure that the attributes are adjusted correctly. So I'm adjusting the level on this one. That's all good. And what I'm also going to do is, yeah, we're good with that. I'm just going to add a point at the start of my existing development. So I'm going to go to draw and add a point. That's it right in the middle here. Let's do that. Now on here, I also have to have the attributes to make sure that everything flows well. And that also my reporting produces the right stuff. Now these attributes, you can create them as you want them. Yeah, it should be good. All right. Now I've created my points. So again, automatically or manually, you can just put points where you wanted if you don't like where this gets created. So points are good. We can move on to the next screen. So here is where I pick kind of the mining method I want. I'll use transverse. If I had a density field on my slopes, I could pick that. But I'll just use the defaults. So it'll use this density times my volume to get some tons. I'm going to manually connect the points. Do one to kind of show you how that works. So this point, I wanted to connect to that, those slopes. Connect selected. So that point's connected to these slopes. You can do it manually, one at a time, or you can auto connect. I'm going to use the level attribute. So each point has a level attribute and the slopes, and that sort of connected each points to my slopes automatically. Next, I have the decline configuration. So there's a little setup here. You can kind of put descriptions on here to help you figure out what's going on. And I'm going to kind of, you can use the bearings or an azimuth to try to guide it to how you want your decline to work. So I'm just going to kind of start up here. Move my screen. I'm just going to kind of move this out of the way. Works a lot better to have a dual screen. And yeah, so I want my decline to start here. I'm going to use a CAD command just to kind of figure out what that azimuth is. I want it to kind of go in that direction. Azimuth 145. Yeah, sure. Let's do 145 or maybe 150. And I want it to kind of wrap around, so do a figure 8. So I want it to go through 0 and then 180, 0 and 180. So I'm going to play around with that azimuth to get my figure 8. All right, there's an option to use opposite bearing. You can, the software, if you keep that option on, it'll kind of do the reverse of what you selected if it can be optimized better. But for now, I specifically want these azimuths, so I won't turn that option on. And if you wanted to, you can have sort of a tolerance for as it's trying to create the design to optimize. Maybe you have a better one than maybe 150, so it'll do minus, so the 140 all the way up to 160, and you can try to have an incremental change that way. But for now, to turn that off, I want it exactly at this azimuth. We also have the total tonnage per level, so it'll try to focus on the high tons and try to optimize that a lot better. Next screen, haulage. So we have, we can put in some costs. So the cost per tons per meter, I don't know, let's put 20, and then maybe development cost per meter. So and these are simple costs. Metrics that it's going to do times the distance, times your tons, and what else do we have? Then we have parameters for our levels. So footwall offset. Let's start off maybe with 25. Crosscut bearing, so my crosscuts going in will be at an azimuth of 270. We've got kind of all these options, standard, the defaults, and then I'll do my decline. So minimum turning radius, let's pick maybe 30. Maximum gradient, let's go no more than 17. Curvature penalty, so the more I'm doing curves, the more I want to not do that. So I'm going to say the higher the penalty, the more try not to do it. Minimum straight length between opposite curves, I'll try to put 70 meters. Minimum straight length at the top of my decline, so I'll leave that also 70 meters. Decline spacing, I'll put it per round, 3 meters. So that's kind of this was my level setup, this is my decline setup. Then I have my design setups down here, so I have some names. You can rename this to what you want, you can change different colors, but I'll leave the standard. And then you pick sort of the cross-sectional shapes. So you can create them. These are sort of standard CAD options. If they already exist, you can already just go and pick them. All right, so this is kind of set up good. Let's see if I missed anything. We should be good now. Okay, so let's kind of put this at an angle to see what we get. That should be good. Now we have the option to actually preview. So let's, before I hit the preview button, just think of how much time it would take you to actually develop all this or to do the designs for the development. And then let's see how fast the Uno can do it. So here we go. We have a first sort of setup. When I click preview, it did that. It also down here gives me some outputs. So I would have some information, very kind of simple based on what I've done. So you can easily kind of just copy this stuff if you wanted to and have an Excel sheet and kind of just paste the values. And then you can kind of start comparing different scenarios as you're running them. That's an option. All right, so the other thing I want to quickly look at is it respect my fault. So if we look, it actually tried to stay away from it as much as possible, especially on this side, which is good. But this option is sort of a second priority. It'll try to optimize the full design and then use that condition as sort of a second attempt to not go through that, to avoid it. So I'm just going to turn that off for now. Let's go and try maybe a different mining method to see what it would look like and how quick that can happen. I'm going to go, instead of do transverse, I'm going to do longitudinal, have a look at that. And I just kind of preview. You'll see down here the numbers changed, and I have a new set of designs. So again, how long would it take you to do all those edits? All right, so it's quick, and it's just based on settings. So spend your time on doing settings instead of all that manual work. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to go back and I'll keep the transverse option on and show you a little bit about quick settings we can change. All right. So one of the cool things is, and it's really common, is, oh, I don't want a footwall offset of 25. You know what, can we just change that to 30? Normally that's a lot of editing we'd have to do. So let's see, just doing that and previewing, see what happens. So from 25 to 30, there you go. And one of the common mistakes is, oh, I'd like to add an extra round at the end of all my stopes. Oh, we forgot to do that. So we have the option here to just kind of extend our designs a little bit. So if I look at all my crosscuts, I'm just going to extend sort of an extra round. There you go. So that was pretty smooth and easy. We have other options in here you can play around with. You can play kind of with smoothing if you want. With the footwall, if you don't apply any deviation angles, you kind of get sort of these. So you can play around with some of these options to try to get maybe a better design. All right, now I've also quickly noticed I do not have any crosscuts for my top of the stopes for some levels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly fix that. Go back to my points, and you can kind of say one point represents multiple levels. So that point, this point I'm going to link to these stopes. Connect selected. And I'm also going to say that this point also belongs to these stopes. Now let's try that. Connect selected. Next, and preview. So I should now have my top crosscuts being created for those stopes. And there you go. So that is that. All right, I'll play a little bit now with the decline options. So that was my level. Now for my decline, let's say just very simply the turning radius. Can we extend that to, instead of 30, can we go 35? How much time would it take you to go there and redesign the whole ramp? So this one is just kind of a quick little option. And again, there's more options you could play around with. So really quickly, if I have, say, no minimum distance between the curves, and you kind of have different options. All right, so I'll just leave it back to what that was. Preview. So it's very quick to kind of see what setting you're doing with the preview option. Now I'm going to go and maybe tweak a little bit my decline. I don't like maybe this level, how it's going. So I'm going to go on this level, put some clipping on. And I'm going to turn on some annotation to quickly show me what level I'm dealing with at the moment. So that's my 250 level. We'll go back to here. Yes, so my 250 level. And right now I'm just trying to go to my 0. And let's say I want to switch it, maybe turn it a little bit going into that way. So we have 345. Let's try that. 345 as my azimuth. Okay, I'm just going to run that. So now we should see kind of this decline crank to that 345. And there we go. And did it still respect my fault? It did, so I'm happy with that. All right, so that's pretty much it. I know it seems very simple, but it's doing a lot of work that we would normally do manually. So simple is better. So that is that. Yeah, so that's pretty much the Uno. Now what I want to do is go on to the next step, which I can tap into now the auto development tool, which is an additional kind of tool in CAD. It does require the advanced license to be run, but in here, if you've never seen the auto development designer, you can actually, there's a bunch of rules that you can use the Deswick Uno designs, like I said, as the starting point, and then you can kind of create all the additional things that you need. So create safety bays, create stations. And you have sort of all these rules that you can set up. So I'm just going to not do that option now, but you can run it as part of your scenario. I'm just going to do the basic Uno, and then I'll come back and run this one. So I'm just going to finish this. And in order to actually have the designs, you have to execute. I want to execute what I just created. All right, so let's see what I have. So I have points in my scenario. I have center lines. I have walls. And I have my solids. And I also created another layer down here called final design. So sometimes you'll just run a bunch of Uno sort of settings or setups or scenarios, and then you just kind of pick what you want and you put it sort of on a final layer. And then you can use other tools to recreate all the solids if you wanted. So real quickly now, I'm going to do the underground auto development designer. So I could activate it through the Uno, or I can just come here, pick the right layer for my new designs. Good, and you can have different setups. So if you have different sort of R bodies, you can sort of set up with the way you want it. But I'm going to use this setup, and I'm just going to kind of execute, see what I'm actually talking about. So Uno gives me the foundational designs, and then with the auto development designer tool, you can kind of tack on all the additional designs, the detail stuff that you need. If I quickly look here, I have maybe some safety bays for my decline. I created an entire sort of ventilation system. So some pretty cool stuff in that auto development tool. Bunch of refuge station, bunch of remux, maybe a whole kind of dewatering system. Yeah, so you can tack on all the additional sort of detailed designs using the auto development tool. So here we have basic Uno run. Okay, so what else can we show? We'll show that, let's say I had the multiple zones and I want to connect all of those. So that is here. Let's say I had different zones, and Deswick Uno would create something like this. Let's go look at some of the settings for that one. So in this option, I would use the multiple decline option, and it's broken down by zone. So when I go to my actual multiple decline, I would have little tabs here to represent each decline. So each decline can be customized separately. And then what happens is we have down here sort of rules to connect to. So you can set which one's your primary, and then what we have here, you can connect from the top of this zone to maybe between 2 points. So that is one rule, between 2 points. And then we have another rule where you can connect maybe from the top of one decline to a very specific point to another zone. So we have those rules. So that's what you would kind of use to connect all your multiple declines together. All right. Now the cool thing, if you need to kind of, this is just visually appealing, but maybe you need to have some numbers, numeric value to this. So quick reporting, we can use some cool functions in CAD. Pivot tables. You can point to those designs. So if you like pivot tables in Excel, then it's sort of available into Deswick CAD. So right now I have my levels and on my rows, and I have my columns as my activity type. And you kind of just pick the information you want to see. So if I actually have an attribute for costing, I can kind of show that if I wanted to. Quickly put some conditional formatting to make it pop at you. There you go, stick out. And then you can kind of play around with this stuff to make it speak to you a little bit better. Maybe collapse all of this. And then visually, you can kind of see what's happening. And then you can kind of go dial in and see how much the length for each, I guess, level and the cost. You could easily, there's also some filtering options you can play around in here to just see what you need to see. Maybe I just want to see my crosscuts. And as you're playing around with that graphically, it could speak a little bit better to you. But you do get some numeric values in here, and then maybe ultimately have options that you can kind of play around with this. And visually, you can kind of see, oh, there's a lot of length happening on that level. So this is one option you can use to quickly, you can also export this stuff out very nicely to Excel if you wanted to. But yeah, so this is within the CAD. But now these days, most people are really excited about something called dashboards. So you can set up all your scenarios and set up a dashboard with all the scenarios, and we would run this. And this is for someone, I guess, that doesn't want to look at any of the designs, but visually this can kind of speak to you. So if I had all my scenarios set up, I could say you could compare them. So scenario 1, scenario 2, total length. You would get maybe some numeric values if you wanted to. You can also get more graphs to kind of compare between different designs. And then you can kind of show all your scenarios and then kind of dial into, oh, this one has less length. Let's go have a look at that. So you could also dial into each scenario and kind of dissect those to see what's happening. So you would kind of have this set up. Every time you run a scenario, you just create a new one, and then you can easily kind of show this to people and kind of explain visually what's happening. All right, so that is the dashboards. What else could you do? Ultimately, if you wanted to, you could also use Deswick IS to run all of this through. You could use the schedule sort of as a reporting tool. So real quickly, if you had a template in IS, the really cool part of IS though is when you're going to kind of create these designs, the solids, you'll have the option to kind of deplete any overlapping of the volumes. So that is a really cool option in IS. And you also have tons of other stuff that you could use in there. But ultimately, you would go into your schedule, use it as a reporting. So it's kind of like a pivot table. You would see all your designs in here. You would see your totals. The really cool part is you can set up production fields. You can kind of set up these cost values if you want. And then every time you run a scenario, you would have the actual report that you want out every time. So it just kind of speaks maybe a little bit better. So that may be another way to represent your results of your development design. Now, there's a lot of options, and every time there's a lot of options, and I don't remember what to do, what do we normally do? We recommend the nice process map. So you could ultimately just create a process map and kind of just press buttons to go through all of this stuff. Yeah, so that's pretty much a glimpse of Deswick Uno, and then a kind of a lot more options to it. Yeah, this is kind of another scenario that we ran. This one right here. So yeah, and it's really quick to do any of that. So yeah, just that's a quick little glimpse of Uno. Like I think Scott mentioned, there's some training happening virtually. So if you guys are interested in kind of getting trained up on this tool, it might save you a lot of time, then definitely register. That's about it from my side.
Excellent. Thanks, Christoph, for that thorough presentation and demonstration. Touched on a lot of things there, Uno and a lot of other bits in Deswick. Even like those Easter egg layer icons you have in your layer control.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, we'll now open it up to the question and answer session. If you have a question, feel free to post it. There's a questions section. I'll be monitoring that, or chat if you need to. But let's make use of that rather than talking over each other. And if anyone can't find the chat or questions, feel free to unmute yourself. I was just hoping we could use that rather than have 30 people talking at once. Okay, looks like questions are starting to come in here. Let's see. They're really tiny. All right, so the first question is, can you adjust the decline so that entry point to your level crosscut is always perpendicular and say a flat 20 meters, 10 meters before and after the entry point?
Right. So you could probably, if you're putting a lot more points, that you can sort of, so let's go back to kind of a setting I had. The decline, basically it's just connecting the points. If it's not doing what you want, my recommendation would be to actually put more points. And then if it's still not doing that, then yeah, you'd have to, if it's still not doing what you want, you'd have to kind of use what it's giving you and then tap into our auto development tools to kind of do the additional, I guess, straightening of that curve if you want. But if you kind of add more points, because right here it's going to try to go from one point to the next, but if you add more points in between, it would probably respect that more. But if it's curving and you do not want that, then unfortunately you'd have to use our auto development to kind of make that happen. So there's still, I guess, a bunch of options that we need to improve on this, and that's kind of the reason the more people use it, the more people have questions and enhancements get put into. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I'll be monitoring the chat, so feel free to chime in, Martin, if you'd like some follow-up on that. We've got a few other questions. So how does UNO deal with situations where there's a mix of longitudinal and transverse?
Right, so you could probably run the first transverse, and then run another scenario with longitudinal. And like I said, you can go and pick. At the end of the day, it's just giving you a bunch of center lines. So you could pick center lines from that scenario and pick center lines from the other scenario, and then have kind of a final design, and then rerun all that what you need. So if Deswick doesn't, if UNO doesn't give you what you need right away, you kind of create scenarios and then pick what you want out of them, and then ultimately use sort of IS tools to rerun it, or just CAD tools to kind of rerun that. So the longitudinal and transverse, it would have to be kind of set up into multiple runs. It's a lot faster doing that than to actually manually doing it, especially in the beginning.
All right. Another question. Could this be used for drift and fill at a tabular deposit?
Yeah, so again, we've done a little bit of testing on the cut and fill, but it is possible, and you use the longitudinal approach for that one. And then you tap into the auto development to kind of trim everything that needs to happen. So yeah, you can do it.
All right, thanks for that. Will the webinar be posted online? Alberto, I'm gonna have to follow up with you on that. It is being recorded. I can generate a link, but it requires a registration to access it. So it's not just freely there. So if you'd like to see it and share it with maybe some of your colleagues, I will send you a link. All right, perfect. Stephen just concurred that that makes sense on the mix on transverse and longitudinal. Raf has a question. Can the ramp have a gradual gradient change when it hits a level, i.e. 15% to 0%, then back to 15%?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I would do in that situation is I would put my points kind of at the beginning and at the end of that transition, and the ramp would go to those points. And then in the middle, or if I actually have the point here, I would use the auto development to kind of take that, I guess, intersection or that missing piece and do that with the auto development. So it's kind of, UNO will give you kind of just a basic starting point, and then it has all the designs you need. I could actually just pick this axis and say from this end, kind of create that transition. So that's using sort of the auto development tool. So UNO gives you a good kind of foundation to start, but then you use the auto development tool to kind of do all that little detailing. So yeah, you'd use auto development tool to do that.
Excellent, thanks for that. I'm not seeing any other questions. If you have one, feel free to post it now. And I'll just give a few minutes to monitor that. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any more questions, so thanks for attending today's webinar on Deswick UNO. If you do, looks like there is one. One last question here. If you have known axis points, can you slope your footwall axis drifts, specifically in a cut and fill, top cut, undercut scenario?
Trying to understand that question. So again,
so
with
drifts, those blue axis drifts,
yeah.
Can you apply a slope on those?
Oh, again, you'd use the auto development tool. You could just kind of select those, and then the auto development tool is an option to just kind of adjust these to grade, which is, if you wanted to also, you could take all your designs and adjust them all to, you could recreate them all with the grade on there. So it's all kind of, all that additional detailing is all done through the auto development. There's tons more options in there.
Yeah. Kind of combine them all.
But just to kind of add to that, the auto development is kind of hard if you don't have anything to start with. So Deswik Uno gives you the starting point, and then auto development, just, you can go nuts with a bunch of rules on there.
All right. Well, again, I guess that's the last question. So thanks for attending the webinar. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact us. You can shoot Christoph an email or just through typical support avenue. So again, thanks for your time, and goodbye for now.
Cheers. Thank you.